Good morning, and welcome to our final primaries edition of Eggs and Issues put on by the Greater Kitsap Chamber of Commerce. My name is John Morrissey. I am the chairman of the board of directors for the new Greater Kitsap Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being here. I'd like to start off by acknowledging we're a little younger in the room. It makes my heart proud. I have a 16-year-old at home to see somebody who attended school with my son in the audience here today. So it's nice to see you, Jake.
I see too.
So we will get started. Our format this morning is we will start with Michelle and work this way with a 3-minute opening statement. After that, we'll move to the question and answer section. I'll start with Michelle. Then I'll start the second question with Spencer, the third question, so on and so forth. And then finally, we'll do 2-minute closing statements, and we'll start with Addison and move backwards to Michelle. Okay? You should have in front of you a blank card. No. Oh, no, they're not blank. I'm sorry. They say challenge on them. Wow, we're getting fancy here, team. Thank you. You have your challenge cards in front of you. During the primaries, and because we have multiple races going on here, both Position 1 and Position 2 of the Legislative 26th House of Representatives, you get 1 additional minute. So it works different during general election than it does primaries. That just gives you 1 additional minute to refute anything that you, or clear the air on anything you may want to from there. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. 3 minutes to you, Michelle Calvier.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for being here this morning, and thank you to the Greater Kitsap Chamber for hosting this event. My name is State Representative Michelle Calvier. I'm currently serving my 8th year and seeking another term in Olympia. I was born and raised here in Bremerton, and my great-grandfather was the very first postmaster of Kitsap County. So, love this area. I believe I'm the only candidate who has lived in all 3 cities. I could be wrong, I'll find out later. But I currently live in Gig Harbor, but I've lived in Port Orchard and Bremerton, and love the district. While I've served in Olympia, I have focused a lot of my time on healthcare, on foster care issues, and then recently was the ranking for housing and human services, and have been focused on the homelessness problem as well as having a compassionate end to the eviction moratorium during COVID. Prior to serving in the legislature, I was a nursing home dentist and cared for people who were homebound or lived in nursing homes, and also was a affiliate professor at the University of Washington. So that's kind of some of the hats that I wear, and I look forward to serving another term. I believe that my work is not done in Olympia, and I would be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next up, I should have mentioned Michelle and Matthew are for Position 2, and Spencer and Addison are for Position 1. So we've combined them here for time's sake. And for Position 1, next up is Spencer Hutchins.
Thank you, John. Thank you, all of you, for being here, and again to the Greater Kitsap Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. My name is Spencer Hutchins. I'm a candidate for our open seat for the State House Position 1, and like I said, it's a pleasure to be here to speak with you today. I grew up in this community, like Michelle. My history is here, and I hope my future is here. The reason that I decided to run for this position are 2 pairs of eyes that stare me down every morning when I get up, and that's my children. And I think we all can recognize that the future we leave for our kids is, I think, the most important thing that we can do. And so I'm running to be part of the process of ensuring a vibrant and solid future, a quality future and quality of life for our kids. I've been a little concerned by what we've seen, and we can talk about that a little more as the morning moves along. I served on the Gig Harbor City Council for a few years and appreciated my time serving my community there. I am a local real estate broker and own a real estate company with offices in Port Orchard, Gig Harbor, and Silverdale. And so wear quite a few hats and am grateful to be here today to make an argument for another hat, being state representative. I love this community. I love the people of this community. We have such a wonderful body of neighbors and friends around us. And what makes this a place that people want to live in and work in and raise their families in are the people around us. And so I'm inspired by that, and I look forward to bringing those values to the state legislature and fighting for what we all cherish in this life and our quality of life. So thank you very much for your consideration. I'm grateful for your vote and grateful to be here with you this morning.
Thank you. Next up for position 2, Matthew Macklin.
Good morning. It's really great to be here with all of you. I do much better in the morning than in the evening, so most of our events are in the evening. It's great to have before 5 o'clock forum, so it's good to be here. I'm Matt Macklin, running for position 2 for the House in the 26th District. That doesn't include where we sit, but just over the bridge, of course. I can now say that I am the only candidate up here today that is a resident of Kitsap County. I am also very familiar with this chamber as it sits Bremerton before, it is Kitsap now. I believe John and I were in the same 20 or 40 for Kitsap leadership. So this is my home. I have 4 children that attend school here, a wife that practices medicine here, and sees patients right here in our community. I'm a practicing attorney. I consult small business owners like yourself on just how to do a good job, and that background comes a lot of practice in the law and keeping them safe from various liabilities and things, but also in running large businesses myself as a nursing home administrator. I came to Kitsap County and I've run nursing centers right here in the district and even on this side of the bridge. So I'm familiar with some of you watching, hopefully some of you in the room, through that work in protecting some of our vulnerable populations up and through COVID. And that was really a lot of the reasons why I'm running. I see a lot of fractured opportunities in our systems that need to be addressed. And I think it's time that we have someone in the legislature in this position that can handle a lot of big problems all at once. I think it's very easy and challenging to be distracted by the current and greatest need, but there are a lot of great needs and we shouldn't be focusing on just one. I'm going to the House to get things done. So I'm looking for your support, looking for your partnership in that as we look at opportunities and ways to make Kitsap and the state of Washington a better place even to do business than it already is. And I think I have the things, the skills that it takes to get those things done in collaboration with on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you. And finally, up for position 1, Addison Richards.
Well, thank you very much, John. Thank you to the Greater Kitsap Chamber, and thank you to all of you for getting up this early in the morning to come join us. Really appreciate your time. My name is Addison Richards. I am running for the open seat here in the 26th District for the State House of Representatives, position 1. And I grew up just down the road, down in Purdy. Went to Peninsula High School, and I just wanted to acknowledge that what you're all thinking. Yes, I am young, and if I didn't have a beard, I'd probably still look like I was in high school. And you're probably not convinced that I've left, but I have. I am now a coach at Peninsula. It's a track and cross country coach. I had the privilege of doing that, but my professional life is in law. I've been a public service lawyer at nonprofits like Northwest Justice Project the past few years, where I've had the experience of working with people living paycheck to paycheck who are also victims of crime. And so there are 3 reasons that I'm running for this position now, and one starts with using that experience to help address our rising cost of living and public safety challenges. I've got extensive experience now working on these issues and being sensitive to what a lot of people are facing with their pocketbooks right now. as well as understanding the layers of what is going on with public safety crises. And I look forward to talking more about that later this morning. The second reason is that I've gained skills over the past few years navigating crises and difficult conversations and really difficult situations. Our politics is really fractured, we're very divided. It's hard to find common ground, it seems, these days. And so I want to take that experience to try to bring people together, build bridges, and offer solutions to the common problems that we all face. And then number three is that I've been representing people who feel down and out, who feel like the system isn't representing them. And so I want to represent you, I want to represent my home. I love this community, I love where we live. I've been serving from when I was a kid in Scouts to now in Rotary and so many organizations up here from Scarlet Road, which helps anti-trafficking efforts, and then also with many other groups. I've started volunteering with Kitsap Legal Services, and so I'm just really looking forward to using the experience that I have to serve and represent you all well. This is about you, it's not about me, and I look forward to your questions this morning. Thank you.
Thank you all. The next section is of the question and answer section. This is the Chamber of Commerce, so we're going to try and focus most of our questions on business here up front. You have 1 minute to respond, at which point you will see a yellow card in the back of the room, which indicates you have 10 seconds left. We're hoping that you're finalizing that comment, finishing that sentence, etc., and then you will see the red card from Irene in the back. That means your time has expired. We need you to finish that sentence so that we can move on. Again, you have 2 challenge cards that you can use so you can get some additional time at the end. The first questions we'll lump 2 together. One, because I start every one of these off with the exact same question because it comes from the most important person in my life, my wife. And so why should people vote for you? And I'm going to combine the second one in there because hopefully you told us a little bit about that in your opening statement. What is your proudest accomplishment? So why should people vote for you, and what is your proudest accomplishment? Michelle.
Thank you for that question. So I think one of the reasons why people should vote for me is because I work very well across the aisle. I have very good relationships with pretty much everybody in Olympia, and a lot of the stuff that we do in Olympia is, kind of more behind the scenes in terms of being able to add amendments and being able to get things done without always being center and forefront. I don't do a lot of legislation that is virtue signaling. I don't believe in that. I think that a lot of our issues are things that the majority of us can agree on. A perfect example of that is putting an end to the eviction moratorium. So I was able to get 20 Democrats to vote with me to end the eviction moratorium by, and I do want to say that I can't see the card. And I'll be honest, I have got a vision problem and I cannot see distance, so I apologize because I do not want to run late, but I can't see that.
Can you hear the buzzing?
I can.
I will have to turn that up just here. I thought about that after you started.
And
so.
I was going to say something to you, and you can interrupt and just let me know 10 minutes.
I remember that about you after I started, so yeah.
Okay, that would be great. And so I apologize, but putting a compassionate end to the eviction moratorium this last session was one of my greater accomplishments. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Spencer.
The reason I believe people should vote for me is similar to what Michelle said. Reasonableness is missing in our politics today. I really believe that we will legislate best when we work together. And I think one of the challenges that we've seen in especially the last 2 legislative sessions, but going back a little while, is our politics in Washington State, at the state legislature, has become one where legislation can be passed without any refinement process, without any debate, without any give and take. And I think, unfortunately, the loser in that equation is the public. It's the citizens of the state of Washington. We will work best when we work across the aisle and work together on common sense, reasonable legislation. And that's what I bring to the table. My most proud accomplishment, I would say, is probably my marriage to my wife, Christy, and my two beautiful kids who I just don't see how I got so lucky. Outside of my family, I would just highlight something that I'm really proud of lately, and that is Fish Food Bank in Gig Harbor raising $8 million to build a permanent facility to serve our community. I was the co-chair of that capital campaign, and it just gives me pure delight to see what our community has done there.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yeah, so why you should vote for me, there's a lot of reasons, but I think it all boils down to the ability to find solutions. I've been known and I've had a proven record to be able to find solutions to hard problems, and that comes with building relationships, not just with those I work with within the community to source those good solutions. You know, Michelle references the eviction moratorium being ended, and that became a problem on the legal end of things. I fell into it. There was a gap. I'm sure we stopped the moratorium, but we didn't have a solution to get people current or to resolve that in the long run. I think that was a missing piece of the legislation. And those are the types of solutions that really fall short. Greatest accomplishment? I definitely have to say my wife and my kids, my family, I love them so much, and they are the core of what I do. I wouldn't be here today because I probably wouldn't care enough, because I do just fine if it were just me. But I have a lot of little people that are depending on me, that are part of this community, and that depend on me to make sure that they have a future here that's sustainable.
Thank you. Addison?
If you are tired of partisanship, then I'm asking you for your vote based on my experience working with people living paycheck to paycheck who are experiencing crises like domestic violence and sexual abuse, so that we can solve our cost of living and public safety challenges. My biggest accomplishment, any time I sat next to somebody in a courtroom advocating for them, trying to get them the protection that they need and have the privilege of doing so, every time I was able to secure money for somebody who was looking to escape a dangerous situation and start over through the family law process and make sure that their kids got the protection and the parenting plan that they needed to be healthy and safe. I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity and that privilege, and I'm hoping to carry that experience with me for you to Olympia.
Thank you. Next question. This question we started. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I wrote it down. You have 1 minute, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. I did want to clarify that the amendment that I put on to end the eviction moratorium, you got to realize I'm in a steep minority here as a Republican in our legislature, and I had to get, I was able to get 20 votes of my Democratic colleagues in the House, and as well as 8 votes of my Democratic senator colleagues to vote for that. The only way I could do that was to promise to have a silent vote, to where it would not be roll called. That was one piece. The other piece was actually getting in funding to help bridge the gap for all of the rental assistance, which we were able to get in with that amendment. However, the governor vetoed it 2 days before session ended, and I had to scramble and get that money into the budget. There were flaws with it when it came into the budget, but I was able to do that, and it was the governor that vetoed that, so I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I apologize. Now to the next question. Then we start with Spencer. Spencer, how do you define economic development, and what is your plan for economic development in the legislative 26?
Thank you, John, for the question. Economic development, to me, is people in our community being able to pursue their livelihoods, to build opportunity and grow the economy through private opportunity and employing others. We have a problem if we think that it is the responsibility of the state government to provide all the economic development that our community needs. What the government has to do is make it attractive, easier for private industry, private enterprise, private individuals to pursue their goals and their business objectives and their economic objectives, and employ their neighbors and have people seeking job opportunities have job opportunities. Right now, we have a problem in the state of Washington where we have large quantities of revenues coming into the state through tax dollars, and the state of Washington is doing very little to ease the burden. We blasted through a $15 billion budget surplus, and rather than reducing the burden, we just added more government programs. We have to do it differently for economic development.
Thank you. Matthew?
Economic development is complicated. A lot of different arms and moving parts, and some of those moving parts are things such as incentive. Some of those moving parts in the way that government needs to operate today, due to our history, are things like equity. So in addition to ensuring that current and opportunistic entrepreneurs have the opportunity to do well and to operate their business successfully, there is a certain amount of responsibility that involves equity. We have underrepresented and minority populations that have systemically not had opportunity. So in a way to benefit the community at large, it would behoove us to collectively provide for opportunity greatly at a lower level, such as education availability options, such as expenses and incentivizing working class individuals to defray costs such as daycare, for instance. So economic development is more than some sort of trickle-down type of effect to a community. It definitely is a trickle in and out.
Thank you. Addison?
Economic development is simple. It's people being able to start businesses, people being able to keep their businesses, people being able to hire more people, and people being able to work jobs that pay the bills so they can retire with dignity. We've got a lot of work to do on all of those things. When I was growing up, I got to work for my dad's landscape business. It was digging irrigation trenches and hauling rocks and bark and doing all those things. Starting his landscape business was my dad's dream, and he's been able to do that successfully now for over a decade. And I want other small businesses to have that opportunity as well. I agree that the state missed a big opportunity to help our small businesses this past legislative session. It did pass some relief for small businesses, but did not go far enough. And we should actually change the law to accommodate for the true mom and pop shops that we have and make sure that we're giving them the tax relief that they need so that people, again, can start businesses and live their dreams and then go on to hire more people, because ultimately employers are also job creators. And so we've got work to do to make our state a much more friendly place for business, and I look forward to doing that too.
Thank you. Michelle?
Economic development is allowing businesses to grow and allowing people to have opportunities to have jobs. And I think we've seen during the pandemic what happens when we don't support businesses. They shut down, and now, our tax structure of what we're able to get from businesses is drastically decreased. And we need to support businesses. We need to make sure that we have an adequate trained workforce as well. We need to make sure that the colleges are lining up with the job opportunities that are available in our area, and that we need to reduce the tax burden. We need to reduce the red tape that businesses have to go through. I was a small business owner for 16 years. I know exactly how challenging it is to have a business in Washington State. It is not fun. And I also see why so many businesses have closed over the last couple of years. And it's because we have not been supporting our businesses.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts on economic development. Next question we start is with Matthew. How have you helped small businesses in the legislative 26 thrive and grow during your career?
Oh, great. I do that every day. As a business law attorney, I own my own small practice. I advise businesses every day on how to operate with best practices, whether it be in accounting, whether it be in contract, whether it be in their basic business employment relationships. I help small businesses every day in our community. As mentioned, it's very difficult at times to operate a business in the state of Washington, especially depending on your specialty. One of the specialty areas I work with are healthcare providers, so nurse practitioners, MDs, dentists, and things that own their own practice. The regulatory environment, the tax environment is very complicated and hard to understand. I think in a lot of ways we can simplify those regulations and structures, especially our tax code. Washington certainly has one of the most complex and convoluted tax codes in the country. There's a way to definitely get our desired end result without the extremely complicated language that's meant to be used by everyday people.
Thank you. Addison?
So I normally mention my experience growing up working for my dad and seeing what he was going through. I also worked at a small business running shoe store while I was in college, and then I worked at a local seafood restaurant while I was going to law school. And I've been able to serve as well on the Gig Harbor Chamber, or the Economic Vitality Committee in the city of Gig Harbor. And I've also been on the board of the Harbor History Museum and looking through our expenses and trying to raise money. And so I'm conscientious of what it takes to run a small business, but I also just want to learn from our businesses and see the way that the legislature can help. And again, I mentioned a couple different ideas, from changing the way our laws work and how we actually define small businesses so that we can give more small businesses the relief that they need from not only B&O taxes, but also help starting up from accounting assistance to licensing to insurance and so many other things. Our Department of Commerce can come alongside, I think, a lot better, as well as provide more freedom for folks to start and keep their businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
Well, I could spend a whole heck of a lot longer than a minute talking about this, but over the last 8 years, I have a very strong pro-business voting record, which is why I've been endorsed by the NFIB and as well as all of the major business groups. In addition to fighting to not only reduce the tax structure, to fight to allow businesses to reopen during COVID, and making it so that we can get an adequate workforce, because now that a lot of people have left the workforce, there's major shortages throughout our state, and getting those colleges lined up with allowing capital budget dollars to be prioritized to some of the greater needs in our state. But I'm fully supported by all of the business groups, and I will continue to fight for businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer?
I own a business in our district. This is the place where I chose, after I was finished with my education, to come back and invest in personally, to put my family and my business, my economic life in, and put down our roots. I know firsthand what it feels like to own a business in Washington State, what it feels like to own a business in the 26th district. Employing people is challenging. And unfortunately, the state of Washington sees business owners as an endless supply of resources for various state programs, new tax revenues that the state would like to bring in. And as a business owner, I can tell you, I am not an endless supply of resources for the state of Washington. Our profit margins are modest. And so we need to understand, as legislators, as policymakers, that the engine of our economy are our local small businesses. And they have got to be treated carefully, solicitously. We have to look out for the best interests of our small businesses, because they drive this economy. They're not an endless supply for the state to use.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, looks like we start with Addison. Inflation is a real thing right now. I know it from personal experience. And it's hurting businesses and customers. What will you do to help alleviate inflation and grow our economy?
I have at least 3 ideas, and could also spend way more than a minute talking about this, but one of the first things that the state can do is help address our housing crisis. We need to change our zoning laws and the Growth Management Act so that we can be strategic about where housing is built out here in Kitsap County, but also make it so that King County's solution for housing cannot continue to be Kitsap and Pierce counties. We have the lowest ratio in the country of available housing per person, and that's got to change. We can also do more to ease the burden on local homeowners and small businesses, as we've also discussed. There are ways that we can help reduce property taxes, for example, and so that would be number 2. And then number 3, we can reduce the cost of child care, health care, long-term care by actually removing regulations to help improve the supply of providers of those services, but then also make investments in things like universal pre-K, starting at the age of 3, which can do a lot of good for so many working families. So those are at least 3 ideas, and I've got more, but I see my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
Well, if we can change the makeup of the legislature, which I think is very possible this year, we can roll back some of the egregious bills that were passed. If you look, for example, at the eviction moratorium and all the pressures that they've put on the housing market, for example, over half of the mom and pop home property owners decided to just sell the properties and get out. Because if you only have 2 properties and one of your renters isn't paying rent and you cannot get the rental assistance for them, you cannot get them out of the home, and you have a mortgage on there, you're looking at a foreclosure. And so that's what's happening, is that people are leaving in droves out of the housing industry. We need to make it so that people want to have housing. The other thing too is that we have put way too much demands on making everything so that the cost of goods has gone up, with the cost of gas going up. All of that is passed on to the consumer. Is that the? I apologize.
Thank you.
Let me pick up where Michelle left off. Where do we feel inflation? Where do we feel inflation most? It's in our wallet. It's in the grocery store. It's at the gas pump. And in order for us to, inflation is a very complex and difficult issue that the Washington State Legislature does not have a corner on the market of solving. There's a lot of geopolitics, a lot of geoeconomics involved. There's a lot of federal law and federal regulation and policy involved in our current economic crisis with inflation. However, to pick up on what Michelle was saying, when the legislature passes laws that virtually double gas taxes next year, average people are going to feel that every time they fill up their tanks. And they're not filling up their tanks so that they can take grandiose road trips. They're filling up their tanks to get to work. They're filling up their tanks to get their kids to school. They're filling up their tanks so that they can pursue their everyday life needs. So we have got to be really clear-eyed about what's going on. The legislature passes a new, and in my opinion, unconstitutional capital gains income tax that just makes it more difficult for people to hang on to more of their own earned money. So when we talk about inflation, we have to recognize where it's hitting people, and it's hitting people in their pocketbooks.
Thank you. Matthew?
Well, there's lots of issues to discuss, so I'll just jump right in. With the Growth Management Act, definitely something we saw is fractured, a lot of updating needed. We saw kind of a gallop toward that a few years back, but not complete. I think that there are these underlying problems that brought us here today. Yes, we're feeling the inflation nationwide, internationally, so there's only limited options that we can do to address it here at home, above our pay grade here at the legislature, I think, so to speak. But additionally, I disagree with Spencer to the left here, or to the right here, but we feel inflation in our pocket, definitely, absolutely. But what's missing here is that solutions like the capital gains tax isn't hitting everyday Washingtonians in their wallet. It's not hitting your paycheck coming home. It's hitting your windfall from the housing market, for instance. That is, again, routed directly back to the GMA and those pitfalls. So again, we didn't get here overnight. It's hitting us hard, and we have to have more of a long view of solution versus a two-year outlook to appease the will of voters, so to speak.
Thank you. There was a challenge. Addison, 1 additional minute.
Yes, I just wanted to briefly address gas taxes and a statement made about them. First of all, I hate gas taxes. I drive a car with 260,000 miles, and people out here in our corner of the world, our corner of the Kitsap Peninsula, we drive everywhere. We know we can't do without a car, and people are really hurting right now, and I want to do something about it. But when he's citing a misleading conservative study about how gas taxes are supposed to go up, that's just not true. The legislature did not pass a gas tax increase this past year, and we've got time to address this in the legislature of this upcoming session, and we have to do that.
Thank you. Next question. Some believe that being pro-business, and I'm sorry, we're back to starting with Michelle. Some believe that being pro-business means being anti-labor. Would you share how you plan to both support business and labor?
Well, thank you for that question, because I've actually been endorsed by a few unions as well, SAU as well as the nurses union. And I think that we need to take care of our employees. I think that most of the issues that unions bring forward are things that business owners actually want. Right now, that we have mass exodus of people leaving the workforce, and a lot of them, are trained positions to where we do not have those people ready and available to fulfill those spots. So I think that businesses can work very well with unions to make sure that we have an adequate workforce that's well cared for, and I do not think that that is in conflict at all. I've yet to meet a business owner who's like, golly gosh, I really want to give the screws to my employees. I think every business owner now values employees even more, and I think that we can continue to support them. Is that right? Okay.
Thank you. Spencer?
The workforce issue that we face right now in our broader economy, but certainly here in Washington and locally, I think really emphasizes the point that Michelle just made, which is businesses have no business if they have no workforce. And as a business owner, I can tell you that personnel matters are the number one most critical thing that I deal with. Regardless of what I'm selling or what my specific business is, any business owner will tell you that workforce, personnel, HR-related things are the number one biggest priority and often the biggest source of challenges. So I completely agree that you're going to be hard-pressed to find someone in business who is dismissive of workforce and labor issues. My younger brother is a laborer in the concrete business, and his work is existentially crucial to our economy. And so I recognize that from a policy standpoint, I embrace that from a policy standpoint, we need to be taking care of our workforce.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yes, the bond between employers and employees are critical. I've worked most of my career in making sure those bonds work. It's been what has been a primary challenge in some long-term care centers and their success rates. I have also been endorsed by SEIU. I'm not sure which unions Michelle's referring to, but also nursing unions as well and associations in the state. I've also received support from the State Association for Long-Term Care. That's the business side of things, so to speak. So I definitely know that these are not mutually exclusive goals that employers and employees have. I think that they are actually supportive of each other, and the real key is to find the balance between those goals. I believe that fair wages are essential and critical for our working families, and I also know that margins are critical. In a business, for instance, such as in healthcare, the small margin, a lot of money flows through, so the largest portion of that expense is going to be labor force. So it's critical that those numbers work for employers and that employees feel valued and enjoy going to work every day in their conditions.
Thank you. Allison?
The balance is fairly straightforward. Job creators need workers, and people need jobs, and need jobs that pay the bills so that they can retire with dignity. And so my philosophy is that there are ways that we can reduce the tax burden on our businesses, that we can improve the regulatory environment to help our businesses survive and thrive, but not do so on the backs of working people, and make sure that working people succeed. Because when more people have money in their pockets to go buy running shoes at the local small business I worked at, for example, then they're not only going to be able to go enjoy those activities, but also be able to boost the local economy and create more jobs. So it's a very cyclical cycle that we can continue to create here. And I remember, when I was working at the running shoe shop, they wanted to pay me more, but the profit margins were small, and they were doing what they could with the minimum wage being what it was. And so we've got to do what we can to help our small businesses survive so they can pass the returns off to employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer? Many business owners are expressing frustration with finding employees. What can you do as an elected representative to help ease that pain?
We must incentivize people being employed, finding work, and we have got to really strengthen our education system and the opportunities outside of schools for the incoming workforce to really get trained up and find opportunities in the economy. I am a big believer in apprenticeships. I'm a big believer in supplementary education. We have an awesome program in the Peninsula School District with the junior ROTC, where there's a lot of life training that goes on. We have got to make sure our workforce development and workforce training programs are operating at top speed to ensure that our workforce needs are being met. So the state needs to ensure that everything it's doing is giving employers the opportunity to meet the needs of workers in the economy that we're in, and also provide the workforce with the training and development it needs to be prepared to meet the workforce needs of the community.
Thank you. Matthew?
I don't think it's any newsflash that there's a mismatch between trades and education and training and open positions in a large way. We see it throughout the sector in education, healthcare, in labor force even. Everyone's having a hard time finding employees. We certainly need to strengthen the pipeline between high school, for instance, to trade work. We need to be doing more to educate our young people to have a valuable trade when they graduate. In JROTC, my son's in it, but it doesn't do anything for him to develop any marketable skill. He might have more discipline, he might wake up better on time, he might wash his hair when he's in the shower, those types of things, but he doesn't have a marketable trade any more than anyone else that graduates high school at this point. That's key. I don't think I think there's a true shortage of funds going toward people who would like to learn a trade or have a trade but can't afford it. They're looking to pay their bills, to keep the lights on, and feed the kids. We need to put the money where it belongs and invest in our people to gain the opportunities they need to be successful and independent.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I agree with lots that's been said already. We've got a short-term problem in that there are help wanted signs in windows right now, but we've also got a long-term problem of seeing help wanted signs for decades to come in just about every facet of the economy, from healthcare to engineers and the trades. And so yes, we do have to change our education system. Our education system right now is not setting up our kids to succeed the way that it should. There are not enough opportunities to pursue a trade, for example. We've got some great apprenticeship programs, we've got some great foundations to build upon, but that pathway is not clear. And then on the other hand, there's unaffordable college on the other side of that. And so a lot of kids are feeling stuck and unsure of what to do, and that has to change, and it's got to change right now, and I've got a plan to do that. And then for the short-term problem, we've got to, again, continue to improve the regulatory and the business environment, and just listen to business owners to figure out, what can we do to bring more people into work. So thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
There's a couple things. Number one is we have done this, which is allowing people to return back to the workforce without penalizing their retirement. We've done that with education, and we've done it with a couple other sectors, and we need to continue to do that. And number two would be to allow people to have flexibility and accommodations if they choose to not have all the vaccines and the boosters that the governor is currently mandating for all state employees. And that includes people who are able to work at home. A lot of those jobs you can still work from home, or like, for example, snow plowers, where it's just them in the snow and they're not around a single person whatsoever. There should have been accommodations for that. Number three is to allow having incentives for the colleges to make sure that their slots match up to the workforce needs that we have in our state. And if they are not able to do that, then we need to allow businesses to have flexibility so that they can train people on the job, such as the hospitals with radiology technicians, which was one of the things that we're working on. Is that right?
Yeah. Thank you. And there was a challenge, so one additional minute to Matt.
In addition to, I think, missing the core of what the question is, those list of things that Representative Cartier mentioned are provenly ineffective. Here we are today. Here we are short a workforce. Here we are with no plan for altering education in a way that's going to be sustainable or solving the problem. We're talking about marketable trades to those who don't have them, especially those that are entering the workforce, not returning to. I think that those that are choosing to return to the workforce after COVID are in a very different position than those who are entering a situation where they have no marketable skill or trade out of high school and they can't afford college.
Thank you. Michelle, one additional minute.
I completely disagree. Actually, if you look at what happened during the pandemic, a lot of businesses, offered people early retirement. People took that. A lot of people stayed home because they were required to. There was no job to go to, and they've changed their lifestyles. So allowing people to return back to work without penalizing their retirement was huge. It was huge for our public schools in order to get substitute teachers. Absolutely. The other thing too is that making sure that we can allow businesses to train people on the job. That is also another thing that is huge. So that if the colleges are not available and are not adequately training people to meet the demands of our state, we absolutely need to have flexibility with that. So I completely disagree. I think that these are absolute solutions, and also allowing people to figure out how they can still work if they choose to not have the vaccine with all the boosters. Absolutely.
Thank you. We're going to switch. That's not good. Not sure what happened there. We're going to switch gears here, but all these things still relate back to business. So this particular question, and I'm going to add a little to it. Looks like we'll start with Matthew here. What will you do to reduce crime and provide greater funding to our police so our businesses and communities are better protected? For instance, Monday morning when I arrived at my dealership, I had an RV missing. Luckily, I have GPS units because I've already had it happen twice since the first of the year. At that point in time, there was only one available police officer in the city of Port Orchard. I said, great, let's call in our friends at the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office. On Monday morning at 10 a.m., there were 2 sheriffs on duty in the entire county of Kitsap. What will you do to reduce crime and provide greater funding to our police so our businesses and communities are better protected? Matthew?
Well, thanks, John. You answered the question. No, so in all reality, this is, again, a multifaceted, a challenging problem. We all feel it. We're all vulnerable. And you told us what the answer is. It's really a staffing issue like we've been talking about. And, I spoke with both Sheriff Kesey and Chief Brown, for instance, that have the same kind of dilemma and really a 2-faceted top priority list that would solve some of this problem. And one is recruiting more officers, right? It's a statewide problem. And that goes back into that job pipeline problem. So we need to incentivize, we need to train up, we need to get them earlier in. And I tell you, Sheriff Kesey has a great plan for trying to mitigate his turnover when we talk about, extending retirements out, having a 3-year plan for recruitment and training, because even after you recruit, there's still a bubble of about a year where individuals need to be trained up. So the answer is, the previous question's answer is filling those technical trade timelines. Additionally, we need to invest heavily in mental health services, getting upstream to some of the source of the problem.
Thank you. Addison?
Well, first of all, John, I'm sorry to hear about that circumstance, and I know that far too many business owners have been experiencing the same thing. I'm proud to have the support of Sheriff Kesey. I'm proud to have the support of first responders and firefighters in South Kitsap and Gig Harbor, and I support funding our first responders. And there are a few different ways to go about our public safety challenges, and number one is to better fund the courts, victim advocates, state patrol, so many of the things that we pass off, but so many costs that we pass off to local governments to fund, and so they aren't able to fund first responders here in Kitsap County. They aren't able to fund officers. So that's number one. Then number two is to change the law to give officers more deference to pursue car thefts, for example. I know being out here, growing up out here, living in the Key Peninsula, Port Orchard, cars are a lifeline without any alternative. And so it's a much bigger deal than just a missing piece of property, and we've got to address that problem. Again, public safety is a huge challenge that I'm hoping to fix with my experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
So that could have been what our issue was.
okay.
Down to Michelle.
Okay. So over the last couple of years, I think we've seen a huge shift in the pendulum where we have been very pro-criminal. And there has been a huge attack on our law enforcement. Law enforcement have put their lives on the line to save us. And they have been heavily attacked by the public, by the media, and they're leaving in droves. They are not treated very well. And the bills that were put forward were coined as though that they were going to solve some of the problems that there are, the legitimate problems that we have within law enforcement. They did not fix those problems, and instead they allowed vehicular, they prohibited vehicular pursuits. Criminals are very intelligent, and they know that if they can steal a car and keep going and they won't get caught, why not steal more? It's really not confusing to me. The other thing too is with the Blake decision. We need to allow people who have got substance abuse issues to have a choice of either getting treatment or going to jail. That should be their two options. I think I got it right.
Thank you.
Thank
Spencer?
you very much, John. I'm very sorry to hear about what you've gone through, and it reminds me of 3 other instances that I personally have experienced in the last week. A friend having a vehicle broken into and engine parts stolen. A local developer having 3 homes under construction, caught on video, an arsonist putting gas on it and lighting them on fire, and a bank robbery. I personally have been in a grocery store while a theft is happening just in the last year. 3-4 times I've seen this happen. I never saw it prior to these last couple of years. The challenges that we face, as Michelle said, are really in large measure policy driven. And I appreciate so much of what my friend on the end of the table has said. Unfortunately, he's running against his caucus in the legislature because these are policies passed by the Democrat majority in the legislature. We now have a tidal wave of crime that is going to require more funding, more police than we had before to wind the clock back. It's a major problem. We hear about it on the door every single day.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments, and we hope to see some change. Challenge, thank you. Go ahead, Hans.
I just wanted to say and clarify that this is one of the reasons I'm running. I wasn't in the legislature passing the bills that we have the past few years. I was representing crime victims. I have been addressing public safety and thinking about these issues for the past few years, and I want to get to work on them.
Thank you. Next questions I'm going to combine together revolve around the Growth Management Act. Looks like we're starting here with Addison. One says, we are living now with the results of GMA 30 years later. What are you going to do to make it go away? The other just, the Growth Management Act destroys local control of building and private property ownership. Would you be in favor of abolishing or in favor of county regulations?
The GMA is not working the way that it should right now. That is true. And we're seeing development pop up in places like Sedgwick, and you can get stopped in traffic down at Lowe's for more than a few minutes, and then it's impossible to turn left onto Bethel Burley, for example, or on the Bethel Road. So we've got challenges with the GMA. The answer is not to throw it out, because that would be throwing out rural communities. That would just obliterate rural communities. We've got to be strategic about where we are building housing on the peninsula, but one of the big reasons that we are getting crushed out here is because, again, King County's solution to housing for decades had been Pierce and Kitsap counties. And people cannot afford to work in Seattle, people cannot afford to work in areas of Tacoma and Lakewood, and so we have to change our zoning laws and the way that the GMA is working so that we are building housing in those places, and then also being strategic about where we are building here on the peninsula so that our local infrastructure can sustain it, and so our rural communities can survive as rural communities.
Thank you. Michelle?
So I'm just going to be real. The Growth Management Act for my Democratic colleagues is kind of like the Holy Grail. So any bills that are put forward to change the Growth Management Act are squashed. So I try to be more realistic, because I know even though the makeup of the legislature may change, there's very good chance that we're not going to get the gavel again. And so what I think is realistic, I don't know if you've ever looked at the entire map of Bremerton or the city of Bremerton or the city of Port Orchard. And there's a reason as to why it is gerrymandered the way it is. And that's because in property poor areas where the city is required to provide services and put in stormwater drains and lighting and sidewalks, it's expensive. And so why on earth would they annex those areas? We need to allow builders to have flexibility into at least those areas of the urban growth area that the county currently owns, and to allow builders to grow without requiring this, and allowing the cities to annex without requiring all of those additional things, or at least allowing them a time frame to have that happen. I think that is realistic, and that is something I would push, and I think that's my time.
Thank you. Spencer?
As a member of a planning commission and then a member of a city council, I can tell you the Growth Management Act is a thorn in the side. And as local government, it is excruciating because you have members of the community who have entrusted you with authority to legislate and regulate in your local area, and then you come to find out, well, really, it's the Department of Commerce. The State Department of Commerce that tells us what to do, or the state legislature that tells us what to do. It's extremely difficult because local government officials and local citizens, local builders, know their communities well. The Growth Management Act doesn't. And again, with respect to my friend on the other side of the table, the Growth Management Act is doing exactly what it was meant to do. It is drawing a very arbitrary distinction between an urban line and a, quote, rural line. But in our area, that's a very blurred line. And we are making all kinds of difficult policy choices because of an arbitrary policy that has to be looked at.
Thank you. Matthew?
Oh, sorry. The Growth Management Act was designed at a time that's very different from ours today. It's not operating how it should, and there's definitely stopgaps that need to be put in place to manage really the overall perspective. When the act was initiated, communities were much, the dial was on the community, the magnifying glass was on the community. At best, it could be a larger regional town level. The Growth Management Act does not provide for a regional planning that we live in today. The idea was getting local municipal districts to play nice in the sandbox when planning. I think that that idea has merit. I think that the deference given to local jurisdictions to make their own way, but then again, the Department of Commerce having kind of the yes or no stamp of approval, that's the part where the bottleneck occurs, and I think that's the best part for innovation and reapplication of the act.
Thank you. And that challenge, Spencer, one additional.
Thank you. A little bit of a technical challenge because I'm not challenging you at all, Matt. I want to throw one other thing into this conversation, and that is the housing issue that we face as a community there is a direct link between the effect of the Growth Management Act and the way it is enforced and the available stock of housing and the cost of that housing, the affordability of that housing. I'm in the housing industry. I take this very, very personally, and when you have average home prices for first-time home buyers or rents for renters being just absolutely economically unfeasible, you have to ask yourself, why are we having such a hard time providing the kind of housing stock? There's a lot to it, but it's very difficult to get through the regulatory red tape of the Growth Management Act and have a builder do what they know the community could need and use in a really efficient and effective way. So there's a strong housing component to our Growth Management Act conversation that I wanted to throw into this discussion here.
Thank you. Two last questions. One, because I really like this question. Looks like we're back to Michelle. Michelle, would you support and try to encourage civic classes in public education curriculum, and how do you feel about the banning of books?
There was actually a bill requiring civics training in school, and I support that. I really believe, I'll tell you, when I first came down to Olympia, I came down as a citizen, and you know, my education, even though I have my doctorate, it was mostly math and science. And I think I took civics at Central Kitsap High School, but it was pretty shaky, and so I'm embarrassed as to how little I knew originally about how our government worked. When I first came down to Olympia advocating as a citizen and realizing how effective that one person's voice could be and how you can change things. And I think that that's very important for everybody to learn. The banning of books. I think that I'm not a fan of banning books. However, I also believe that if there are pornographic material that should not be in elementary schools or the schools. I think that there should be some sort of something for that, because I do think we should protect our children.
Thank you.
That's my
Spencer.
Civics education is one of the most important things that we must ensure happens in our education system. And I agree with what Michelle said about understanding our government and how our government works. But to be honest, I think civics education is most important because it helps us understand how to live together. It helps us understand our responsibilities, our obligations to one another. And in my opinion, there was nothing better for my education than the quality civics I learned. It's one of the reasons that I know how to be friends with people who don't agree with me. We all have to live together. And civics education is crucial for understanding how the government works, but it goes beyond that. It goes to how we live together. And as educated, involved members of our society, we have to think about that. We have to make that a priority. And with respect to books, I'll just echo what Michelle said. I'm not generally a fan of banning books. I also think we need to protect our vulnerable kids from materials that are inappropriate.
Thank you. Matthew?
So civics, absolutely. I think that it's a core way to empower citizens and people into their government and advocate for themselves. I think that the standing joke is about those who are naturalized citizens versus those that are born here know more about our democracy than we do, our republic than we do. I think that's true in some ways, and they are empowered in that way. They're interested. So I think that we need to find a way to really get that placed at multiple levels across the education spectrum. As far as banning books, no, books shouldn't be banned. I think that our constitutional amendments for freedom of speech and what does and does not qualify as free speech definitely shells out most of the inappropriate material. And I think that when we talk about what's age appropriate, you run a delicate position and a risk when you allow the community or school level individual to determine what is or is not age appropriate.
Thank you. Madison?
I really appreciate this question, and we are all at this table because we care a lot about civics and making sure that our government is working on solving our common problems with common solutions and working together. And you all are here because you all care about civics, and I'm grateful for my civics teachers, my government teacher who really instilled this passion in me when I was a student. But we've got a lot of work to do. Retired Supreme Court Justice Souter has said that we can trace our current problems to a decline in civic education, and I think he's right. So we've got to address that. I'm against banning books. I am in favor of parents having a say of what their kids learn in the classroom. I want to make sure that the legislature is doing everything we can to not take decisions away from educators and from parents and legislating curriculum.
Thank you. Last question, because it's a hot topic at this moment. Looks like we start with Spencer. How has the Supreme Court Roe decision changed your prospective agenda for legislative action in the coming year?
How has Dobbs changed my...
How has Roe
Yes.
changed your prospective legislative agenda for the coming year?
It's a very simple answer, and the answer is zero. I understand this is an inflamed issue, and people have really hot, feelings and views, and it's very personal for a lot of people, the issue of abortion. Washington State, abortion rights and abortion laws, as long since been settled. And it's the voters of the state of Washington who made Washington State's abortion law. I have no interest in relitigating an issue that has been settled. I certainly have the greatest respect for the will of the voters who made this decision. So as far as I am concerned, the Dobbs decision, the overturning of Roe, changes nothing about my legislative priorities going into the legislature. We have some very serious Main Street kitchen table issues around crime, policing, inflation, economy, taxes, opportunity. These are the things that I'm focused on, and I don't see that there's any reason for us to open the door on the abortion rights issue in the state legislature.
Thank you. Matthew?
I'm both disappointed but not surprised about colleague in the right here's comments. Dobbs was about much more than just abortion rights. It's about self-determination. It's about the right to marry who you want to marry. It's about the right to privacy. It's about so much more. So when I'm asked how has Dobbs changed my priorities, it hasn't, but it's certainly made them more urgent. I think we were in a safe place of thinking these were secure areas of privacy and independence. However, our Supreme Court kind of changed that up on us. I think that we now have an opportunity to really echo what we stand for here in the state of Washington. And I don't think that rights to someone's independence and self-determination should change depending on which border you cross in the country. I think that that's an American value, and I think that doing anything but supporting an individual's right to self-determination and to determine how they want to live their life is unalienable.
Thank you. Addison?
We have to ensure that every person is treated with equal liberty. Every person is guaranteed equal protection under the laws. Every person has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this country, and Dobbs' decision threatens that. And we have to make sure then that we have people in the state legislature who will not just say it's not a priority, but will make sure that those rights are protected and that people are able to make decisions for themselves about whether to start a family. It's a very personal decision, and I do think that there are bipartisan ways that we can come together on this. The United States is dreadful when it comes to unplanned pregnancies. We are terrible when it comes to how many mothers die in childbirth. We are terrible with how many young children die in the birth process, and we have a lot of work to do to improve our healthcare system. And I think there's a lot of ways that people on both sides of this debate can come together in our legislature to address this. But we need people in the legislature to make sure that those rights are protected.
Thank you. Michelle?
I mean, my answer is basically an echo of what Spencer said. So I completely agree with him. This is something that, it's basically gone down to the state level, and our state has overwhelmingly supported some form of abortive rights, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I am a little concerned with what my opponent had said about how this is going to change whether you can marry who you want to marry. That had nothing to do with the Supreme Court decision. Those are scary tactics. That has absolutely nothing to do with that. And that type of talk is exactly what we do not want in Olympia. Like, I'm sorry, and I have never been one to grandstand or put forward bills that say, oh, I hate the Democrats and I hate this and that. I'm sorry, but we need to come together and not be divisive. So I'm just really concerned about that comment.
Thank you. There was one additional challenge. Matthew?
So I only have a minute to respond, but it absolutely is about those things. I would encourage my opponent to read the Casey decision that was mentioned, the Roe decision, obviously, and the entire decision if she hasn't already, which I probably has, but these things are clearly at stake. Those underlying cases that were overturned by the court were used and cited in decisions like Loving to allow individuals to marry who they want. There are states that are pursuing now gay marriage bans as a result of this decision. Why? Because case law is driving it. None of these apparent rights have been codified into our law.
Thank you. We've reached the point where we're done with questions and answers. You now get to provide your closing statements. We'll start with Addison and move backwards. 2 minutes each.
Well, again, I want to thank you, John, for moderating, to all of you for spending your morning with us, to all those watching, and to the Greater Kitsap Chamber for hosting. Again, my name is Addison Richards. I'm running for the open seat here in the 26th District, my home. And if you are tired of partisanship, then I'm asking you to vote for me based on my experience dealing with the issues that are on everyone's mind right now, whether it's our rising cost of living or public safety challenges. I want to bring that experience to advocate for this community and to represent you well in Olympia. I have a plan to address these things, and I'm very sensitive to these challenges that we face, and we can't wait to address our housing crisis, our homelessness crisis. We can't wait to address our public safety challenges and make sure that everyone feels safe in their home. We can't wait for our kids to have the opportunities to succeed, whether that's in a trade or onto an affordable college, so that they can get the jobs they need to pay the bills and retire with dignity. We can't wait to solve our long-term care and healthcare challenges so that every senior has the opportunity to retire the way that they want to, with dignity. And so we've got to get to work on all these things, and again, I want to bring my experience and my youthful energy to the majority party to change the way that we're doing things, and to bring common sense and fight for solutions that are going to work for this community. We have not had a Democratic member from this district in the legislature for a long time, and it shows with our crumbling infrastructure. Our schools are falling behind, and this has to change, and it has to change quickly, and that's why I'm here, and I ask for your vote, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt.
Well, John and everyone, thank you also for giving me the opportunity to be here to speak with you all. It's always great to have a good conversation and debate amongst ideas. It's always great to hear from the community on what's on their mind, and it's validating because it's on my mind too. I'm Matt Macklin, running for position 2 in the 26th district, and I hope to earn your vote. If you haven't had a chance to stop out one of our events, please check the website and see what those are, so we can have some more talk time. I'm running to get things done in Olympia for us. I think that what you see here is the display how some of the facts are not accurate in the minds of some of the candidates. I think that we need someone who's squarely centered like myself, who supports business and economic growth, who understands social justice and problems facing our community today, that can work with all members of the legislature to move the dial for everyone, not just anyone on the fringe or any majority party, but as a majority party candidate, I ensure that the ideology that is that people count matters, whether that's a person in business or if it's a person that's homeless. I think that healthcare access, education, and filling the jobs pipeline, and infrastructure like housing are all things that we can agree need to be solved. And if you send me to Olympia, you have someone who can work on all those problems. As I mentioned earlier, I think that we too often focus on the latest, greatest problem. We don't work on all the problems. By moving the needle forward in all of these problems that are going to solve some of the issues we face in our community upstream, the downstream problems like property theft are going to be less likely to occur. It's always going to occur, but we can definitely eliminate a lot of it if we work the right dials and pull the right levers.
Thank you. Spencer.
Thank you again, John, for a great panel discussion, and thank you to the Greater Kitsap Chamber. It is a pleasure to be here, and I just want to say it is truly a delight. It is a pleasure to be among neighbors who care about the future of our community and the future of our state. This gives me a lot of energy, and I know there are a bunch of people in the room who are not necessarily my supporters, and that's not the point. The point is we're all in this together. We all have to live with one another, and we should want to live together and work to move our community in the right direction. That gives me a lot of energy and a lot of hope. I want to talk a little bit about what I'm hearing at the door. When I knock on doors and talk to members of our community, I'm hearing very obviously about concerns around crime and policing. I'm hearing very obviously about concerns around the economy, inflation, taxes. I'm hearing those things, but I am also very consistently hearing concern, frustration, exasperation with the tone and tenor of our politics and the way business is done in Olympia. I am hearing from people who don't understand why team sports has to be the order of the day, rather than what works best for all of us. I come to this very humbly, wanting very much to reach out as much as I can to anyone who will give me the opportunity. We all have to live together, and I just want to say a couple things about my opponent, who I thoroughly enjoy, respect, and admire. And he and I have met many times now, and I have never come away from an interaction with him thinking anything other than the most positive things. My campaign manager is a liberal Democrat. It's not because she's not my campaign manager because she agrees with me on, well, almost anything, but because we see that what we're about is moving things in the right direction for all of us, and she sees in me someone worth supporting. I appreciate that. That's what I hope to bring to the legislature, get real things done for real people, and move us forward.
Thank you. Michelle?
When I first ran for the legislature, I made a promise to the public and to myself to listen to everyone regardless of where they stood on the political spectrum, and to make a decision that is in the best interest of the district. Because these are the people that I represent. And I've done so time and time again. And there are many times that I have bucked my caucus. And let me tell you, it has come at a cost. I think publicly you guys have seen me over the years being heavily attacked from the more fringe groups in my party. There's a cost to bucking your caucus. And there's a cost to standing up for the people. And there's a lot of pressure. I cannot tell you how much pressure that is put on me. Like how many times our leadership has said, this is how you have to vote. And I said, I'm not going to vote that way. This is not in the best interest of my district. And I'm not going to vote that way. And the thing is that you have to ask yourself, who is going to make those decisions? Who is going to stand up to that pressure? I have a proven track record of that. I will continue to fight for the people. I will continue to listen to everyone and base my decisions off of the input I receive, because that is my job. I will not do the virtue signaling. I will not try to scare you with things that may or may not happen. But I believe it's my job to relay the facts and to let you know what the political environment is, and also to make decisions on what is in the best interest of my constituents. And I will continue to fight for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates here today, and thank you to all of you for being here as well. And thank you to Cloverleaf. I hope you got a chance to have some breakfast here this morning. It is going to continue to be our mission to have eggs and issues, as that's what started here in Bremerton many years ago with the Bremers. You used to show up and break bread with them in the morning. So we appreciate you being here. We hope you'll join us again as we get ready for the general election. The next Eggs and Issues will be September the 27th at 9 a.m. More information to come for that. And we'll hope that you'll join us, I believe, next week for our educational carnival. Check out the chamber website for more details. With that, we thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.